Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are unpacking a topic that is literally everywhere in the headlines, yet its actual financial mechanics are constantly misunderstood. We're talking about trade wars and tariffs. We are going to cut straight through all the political noise to look strictly at the source data and figure out the real bottom line impact on our wallets. Okay, let's dive right into this. The central mystery we are trying to solve today is pretty simple. Who is actually footing the bill for the trade war? When tariffs are slapped on imported goods, somebody has to write the check, right? We hear all these sweeping statements in the media from every side of the political spectrum, but we want to know what the hard data actually says. So let's look past the rhetoric and find out exactly whose wallet gets lighter when international trade disputes start heating up. And this perfectly illustrates the big disconnect. There's this huge, grand macroeconomic myth floating around out there, the idea that foreign countries pay for tariffs. Now, it sounds great in a speech, for sure. The narrative kind of suggests that the producing country somehow just absorbs the penalty for exporting their goods. But the unarguable reality revealed by the data is that local businesses and everyday consumers are the ones paying the price. Foreign countries don't just send over a giant check to cover the tariff. Instead, that cost is immediately injected right into our own domestic supply chain. So to debunk this, we literally just have to follow the money. I mean, if foreign nations aren't paying this penalty out of their own treasuries, where is that revenue actually being generated? Well, tracking the life cycle of a product from the shipping port all the way to your living room gives us its statistical reality check, and it completely flips the script on how we traditionally think about global trade disputes. Now, what's absolutely wild about the data is the sheer scale. A staggering 90% of tariff revenue actually comes directly from local businesses and everyday consumers. Just think about that for a second. 9 out of every $10 collected from these tariffs are pulled right out of our own domestic economy, not from overseas competitors. Only 10% comes from other sources or absorbed margins. This single statistic completely shatters the illusion of who bears the burden in a trade war. It is an internal cost, and it's largely funded by the very people the tariffs are supposedly designed to protect. To understand exactly how that 90% ends up on our shoulders, we need to quickly break down the mechanics of a little concept called full pass-through costs. Sounds like economic jargon, but it's really just the mechanics of passing the buck. In economics, full pass-through happens when the financial burden of a tariff or a tax is transferred completely down the line to the end consumer. The importer gets hit with a tax at the border, right? But instead of taking a hit to their own profit margins, they just increase the wholesale price. Then the retailer buys it at a higher price, so they raise the retail price on the shelf. The cost passes completely through the chain untouched until it reaches the last person in line. And that last person just so happens to be you, standing at the checkout counter. Let's map out how this builds. It's a direct 3-step chain reaction. Step 1, tariffs hit the importing businesses right at the border. Step 2, that full pass-through mechanism kicks in like a giant conveyor belt for added expenses. And step 3, consumers, meaning us, pay higher prices at the register. It is a completely mechanical, totally apolitical process. The basic laws of supply and demand basically dictate that businesses will protect their viability by handing the bill right over to the shopper. There's no magic buffer absorbing the shock here. The shock travels straight down the line. So the absolutely crucial point here is zooming out of the macroeconomics and looking at your personal microeconomic reality. This hits every single household. We aren't just talking about massive shipping containers and high-level international diplomacy anymore. We're talking about your weekly grocery run, your back-to-school shopping, and your holiday gift budgets. We are the ones silently funding that tariff revenue every single time we swipe our credit cards. Now, I want you to think about the number 1,000. Seriously, let that sink in for a second. When researchers calculated the actual on-the-ground impact of these full pass-through costs on the average household's annual expenses, this is the figure they arrived at. But 1,000 what exactly? Is it $1,000, 1,000 pennies, 1,000 hours of lost wages? What exactly is the best unit of measurement to describe this tangible, invisible burden placed on a modern household by a trade war? It is roughly 1,000 extra bananas in annual expenses. Yeah, you heard me right, bananas. Imagine walking out of the grocery store with 1,000 extra bananas that you were forced to pay for over the course of the year, but you never, ever actually get to eat them. That is the physical equivalent of the financial drain happening to households right now due to these hidden tariff costs. It makes this invisible tax highly memorable, incredibly relatable, and frankly a bit staggering when you picture the sheer volume of it. So if the data clearly shows that 90% of the revenue is coming from us, and full pass-through costs mean we are essentially buying 1,000 invisible bananas every single year, Who actually wins a trade war? It's a massive question, right? We'll leave you to ponder that one. Thank you so much for joining us for this explainer, and we will catch you next time.